All right, let's get this thing started. So thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is PJ Stevens. I'm one of the marketing managers here at SmartBear. We've got a pretty awesome webinar for you today around ReadyAPI 2.5. So we've got some really awesome features to show off, including some support for Docker, which is really cool. And Gail and Mike will jump into that in a few minutes. But before we get started, just wanted to let everyone know about our user conference, which is coming up here at the end of October. We're about a month away. It is in downtown Boston. So this is the second annual SmartBear user conference. Last year was really great, and we're really pushing it and making it even bigger this year, moving it into downtown Boston at the Copley Marriott. We have a specific ReadyAPI track. So if you're using the tool or you want to learn more about best practices with the tool, we'll have a full day of sessions garnered around that. So really great learning opportunity for everyone out there. If you're interested in learning more, check out smartbear.com/connect-2018. And we're currently running a promo called Connect 4. So buy 3 tickets and get the 4th one free. You can reach out to our team via the chat on smartbear.com/connect-2018 and they'll hook you up. So should be an exciting session. Now we just want to introduce today's wonderful presenters from our product management team. Our director of product management is Gail Schlansky. How's it going, Gail?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Excited to get this thing kicked
Absolutely.
off here.
Yeah,
Awesome.
This was a great release and we're getting great feedback. So excited to share it with everyone.
Awesome. And then we've got Mike Giller, who is our product owner for ReadyAPI. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, everyone. Happy to drive this, talk about the 2.5 release. So excited to kick it off.
Awesome.
He put on his radio voice.
Yes. This is my demo mode. It's just how I talk all day to my kids as well.
All right, so let's kick off the agenda here. So we frequently get the question, yes, we are recording this session and we will send it out to you via email, hopefully by tomorrow or Thursday at the latest. So feel free to share it with your teammates. If you find anything valuable, hopefully you'll find a lot valuable. Definitely ask questions. Please use the chat box or the Q&A box to ask the team questions, and we will try to get to those as we can. If you want to learn more about some of the other modules in ReadyAPI, you can check those out via free trial at smartbear.com/ReadyAPI. So without further ado, we just want to run a quick couple of poll questions to kind of figure out who our audience is today. And so let's see if we can kick this off.
It's my favorite part of it.
Yeah, this is like engagement. We got everybody. So which version of ReadyAPI do you currently have installed is our first question. And then the second question is which tools within the ReadyAPI suite do you use? So feel free to select multiple on the second option there if you're using more than SOAP, Secure, Load, ServiceV, or Virt Server. So we'll let this run for 30 or more seconds here, just to kind of let everybody chime in.
I'm hoping there's a really high percentage on 2.5 for the first question.
It looks like a good mix so far. All right, we'll give people 10 more seconds to fill this out. Again, we appreciate your response here. Okay, and I will end this now. We've done that for a minute. Awesome. So let's see, I'll share some results. All right, so we've got a pretty good mix here. We've got some folks who are new to ReadyAPI and are working on a trial, or they don't have a license. We've also got a great group mix of customers. ReadyAPI 2.5 looks like a bunch of people on 2.4. And some earlier versions as well.
Earlier. Come on, guys. Come on. No, actually, this is pretty good. This is 2.4 and 2.5 is by far the biggest, so that's great.
If we do our job, we'll demo 2.5 and you will go through the red tape.
They'll be doing it as we go through the session. They'll be updating while we, we're going to actually look at the data and see how many people are downloading right when we during the session.
And then a lot of SoapUI Pro users. That's no surprise. But some good use of load and secure and ServiceV too.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right.
Cool. So with that, let's kick off the first slide today.
That's kind of the biggest marketing push behind the release is Docker.
Docker support. So we heard you guys loud and clear. So, as we all know, it's all great to create tests and run automated tests and run the tests and run lots of tests. But everybody is now using SoapUI to integrate into their CI/CD environments. And, being able to support Docker for Test Runner is a huge value add. So a couple of our customers had done some work to make it work themselves, but we have hopefully, and actually we got feedback from one of those customers saying that what we implemented was actually much better and easier to use than what they had done in-house. So we encourage you to upgrade to the Test Runner implementation that runs in Docker. It's on the Docker download site, so you can go get it at docker.com. And it just allows you to run your tests in a Docker container, as many Docker containers as you want, and off you go. So I think Mike's got some more you're going to show on it.
Yes. Okay. I think every time you turn your head.
You can't hear.
Okay. Absolutely. So we'll talk a little bit more about kind of how to implement it. And I don't really want to, spin up containers and show command line commands. It kind of makes for a dry demo. So I'll just talk a little bit more technical about it. But there's definitely a lot of feedback that we got from a lot of customers that went through the pain of automating with Docker with what we had before, which was mainly command line runners. So I think the biggest thing that we've heard was a need to provide better exit codes. So now we'll give you better exit codes. We'll handle licensing for you as you spin up containers. If something fails, you'll know if it's a licensing or execution or anything else around a failure.
And by the way, it requires a floating license for the Docker container. So that's something that you might not realize. But to leverage the license, to leverage the way a container spins up and spins down, you need to have a floating license.
Right, exactly. And I mean, a lot of that reasoning is actually, purely technical, because floating license managed concurrency, which is all about containerization. So more than happy to, kind of dive into that technical discussion. But it does, once it's all set up, it works everything for you. It'll consume a license. It'll spin it up. It'll spin up ReadyAPI. It'll run the test. It will generate a report in a needed environment. There's a way to pass in custom jars. So if you have your own drivers, if you have your own Groovy and Java extensions as part of your scripted tests, for example, that's easily supported. So it's very, very extensible and flexible. So the automation piece, like I said, was kind of achievable with a lot of work before. Now it's all documented. The initial feedback is it's a lot easier. And if you disagree at all, please provide feedback. Write to us, reach out, I don't know, tweet, come to a conference. Happy to hear any kind of user feedback for this. Okay. And again, I didn't quite want to go into a demo.
I was going to show you the Docker Hub page, but
no, we'll get there. I promise. I will show you the Docker Hub page. I'll show you some other integrations in general. But I will take this opportunity actually to segue into the next thing.
So the next slide is describing something that we felt that our customers didn't really get full insight into. So as you guys who have been using ReadyAPI for a long time know, we have a ton of different integrations already. We have integrations with lots of plugins. We have command line. We have all sorts of ways that we allow you to integrate ReadyAPI into your infrastructure, whether it be for CI/CD or for test management or whatever.
We hope you know all that.
We hope you all know that. But what we realize is that some people don't realize that, and they certainly don't realize it when they get started. So we added this new integration page in the overall, if you'll see on the top right, it's one of the tabs in ReadyAPI now. And this tab gives you a full insight into what is available for integrations and then what integrations you have installed already. And also which ones are native, which ones are third party, which ones are, like if it's already integrated in, if it comes installed, and all that information. And so we just wanted to make it easier for you to take advantage of the power behind ReadyAPI. And so that's what this integration page is all about.
Yeah, and I'll probably repeat a lot of what Gail said in a slightly different way, where we had a plugin manager that extended ReadyAPI functionality itself. And this integration page replaces the plugin manager. So, if before I had an alert site plugin, I can delete it, I can manage it, I can update plugins. But it is more than that, because there were a lot of external things like Docker, which you can see you can easily search, find, click on the details. This will take you to a proper page. And then this is usually the external link directly in Docker Hub, where you can find the information about the runners, how to deploy it, etc. So, that integrations page is definitely meant for you to explore everything available, not just the plugins to enhance ReadyAPI, but also, external links, external ways to integrate. And, another thing that we kind of struggle to convey as an example is command line, right? So command line was a very common way for people to automate and extend our functionality, our execution through, nightly schedule, cron tasks, external processes, etc. So again, we are exposing that there is command line through integrations, even though it's built in, even though it's not technically a plugin. We hope that this will catch your eye as part of the integrations tab.
So now let's go back to the slides, and we're going to talk about some of the new additions that we have that will show up on this page, right? So,
yes.
So we really focused a lot on making the integration of ReadyAPI into your infrastructure as broad and as powerful and as easy to use as possible. So the dev team actually did a bunch of work, and they actually had a hackathon where they were focused on integrations, which was great. And so we took the work they had done there and we expanded it and enhanced it. And we have added a whole bunch of, or a number of additional integrations into the portfolio. So one of the ones that customers have asked us for a lot was support for VSTS, Visual Studio Team Services, and we've now...
Which did rebrand right before we launched.
Yes, of course.
Thanks, VSTS.
So, right. So it actually changed its name, I think, 3 days
Azure
before we
DevOps.
launched. And what's important to note is that it runs both functional tests and it creates reports. We had some very specific requirements coming in from customers around integrating the reporting capability, and we've done that. So, Mike, do you want to flip over and show that? Or do you want to switch to that at the end?
Well, yeah,
by the way, as a coding here, the little splats on the side mean that we're going to actually show it to you. So, that's so you know what so we know what we're doing.
I'm sure closer to the Jenkins side.
Okay. All right. So then we also added support for TeamCity. So you can run your SoapUI tests from TeamCity.
Yeah, and I did want to, not to show you the integration itself, but because there's so many automation frameworks out there, we're listing the common ones like TeamCity, Jenkins, etc. So for each one, just go into the integration page, go to the details. We will usually take you to, to where the plugin is located, and you'll be able to download it, install it. If you need any additional links, we are happy to provide it. So I think this was the showing of it, and I'm happy to show Jenkins. We've done some of that in this release, but we'll talk about it.
So QA Complete. Integration with QA Complete, which is, of course, one of the SmartBear products. And it provides, a thorough integration with it. The Slack integration, as we say internally, you have to have Slack integration to be cool, right? Yeah. So actually, we're excited about the Slack integration. We use it as internally a lot. We're huge Slack users, but Test Runner now can send statuses to either groups or to direct messages to individuals. So it's great. And it's actually in the launching test runner dialog is where that integration sits.
Mm-hmm.
Want to talk about?
Yeah, and for Slack, again, I just want to very quick to show. So once this is all set up and installed, there is actually a Slack app you have to install. Again, there's some detailed information on it. You will then get messages with the status of pass-fail of your automated API test run. Well, yeah, of your API test runs, and the details, the reports as the kind of outcome as the result of those API tests.
What's the next one? The next one is the Jenkins, updated Jenkins. And one of the things, mostly it was pretty much well received. I mean, there really wasn't a lot to change, but there was a request for extending it to send reports in a PDF format. Right.
And in this one I can definitely show Jenkins, you know, based on what we've seen in the marketplace, is one of the leaders around CI/CD. So when you run a test, so first of all, I do want to show, you know, once you install the plugin, you'll be able just to then refer to a step to automate API runs. So you can see, for example, here in the build, we added a build step of SoapUI Pro run functional test, and that will prompt you, you know, where you want to point to the test run, or what kind of project you want to do, etc. So it's pretty straightforward. You can see I filled in 3 out of 6 fields, and then it runs. And now, as the final result of that run, we're going to give you success or failure. We're going to give you JUnit reports as a part of it, and we'll also give you the SoapUI Pro test result, which is going to point you to a detailed PDF report behind the scenes that is a little more printable and readable. So it's just another option for you to share the reports with the team and, you know, look at statistics in a nicer layout, basically.
All right. So the next thing is 2 things that we took and we made them native. So instead of having to install a plugin, we now have better support for Swagger Hub and for Git, actually part of what gets installed. So for the Swagger Hub one, you can import definitions and export them right to Swagger Hub. No plugin requirement. And on the Git support, it's also integrated right in.
Right. And the Git support was kind of 2-pronged. So you can see a sub bullet about enabled version control. So we had Git support through, again, I don't want to get you into the implementation weeds. We had it in previous versions. We still have it. Before it was a plugin, now it's embedded. We definitely have plans to enhance it. There's a reason we kind of pulled it into the main code base. And one thing before was, after you create a project, you can go into the project and convert it into a composite project, right? And then set it to true, associate it with Git, et cetera, et cetera. We did add a little more descriptive UX over here, saying enable version control. So if you do check this, this is effectively going to enable your composite project so that later you can add it into version control, and then on save, you'll be able to associate it with the Git repository. So that's something that we had. We're definitely, you know, promoting that a little bit more. So you can tie that directly into Git. So this should work for, you know, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, etc. And we definitely have a lot of users using that now. And this is the reason we're investing and pulling that in and then further enhancing it in the ongoing releases.
All right, so a lot of integrations, a lot of great stuff that people asked for.
Yeah,
sorry.
I think this is a good point. I'm just going through very quickly. There's actually a lot of questions that came in.
My bad, I haven't been.
No, it's fine. It's just, and some of them are pretty involved, but I was hoping to share the ones that are asked and answer them verbally. So one question was, you know, a lot of our CI integration, the TFS, VSTS, Azure DevOps, for example, the Jenkins, etc. Is it for multiple SoapUI projects or just one? So the integration is for kicking off a test in our project, right? And then, and this is kind of tied to another project, to another question. Yeah, can you use this Jenkins plugin in a declarative scripted pipeline? So yes, all of our plugins for VSTS, for Jenkins, right, for TeamCity are meant to work in a pipeline. So we absolutely expect you to build your applications, rebuild your APIs, maybe stage your environment, and then run your API tests, and then maybe even run more API tests from different projects. So we'll help you invoke the tests from within a project, but we do expect, we do definitely see much more sophisticated pipelines that we are a part of in the API testing side. Okay.
So somebody said, I'd like to learn how to make plugins for ReadyAPI. Who do I contact? And we have consultants that would be happy to help you. There's documentation. Why don't you contact one of us and we'll make sure you get to the right person for that.
And there is a page for that as well, but definitely talk to us because I think there's some. So let us know because to Gail's point, there might already be something partially available, developed, or there's some interest. So contact us directly. I don't know, just every which way will get to us. Tweet it. I don't know. It's that works as well. Just tweet at SmartBear, I think.
The next question was, does the integration option only display for 2.5? Yes. So this is a new tab that we've added to 2.5 specifically. Prior to 2.5, the integrations, most of these integrations already existed, and you would just go to the plugin manager. So we made it prettier and better and more thorough, but those integrations, a large percentage of them are already available.
Right. Sorry, I just clicked answer live, and there was a question in the Q&A about, about give an example of a Git integration. So, so we talked about composite project, about enabled versioning. Behind the scenes, that will break out our one big project with all the tests that by default is saved as a single XML file into multiple files. So every test becomes its own file, which makes it a lot easier to manage within source control. Then we tie it into Git. And then, for example, if I have a test suite, or if I have a test case or a number of test cases that I manage, they become different files from, for example, Gail's tests. And then that management within Git becomes a lot easier, where I can check in my tests. She can pull in, her changes into her environment, et cetera.
The idea is that you segment you would segment your testing so that different individuals can be working on different parts of it at a time, at the same time, I should say, at the same time. And so you end up with one test at the end, but it's actually been developed maybe by multiple people. It's broken up, so it's easier to maintain and organize. So that's an example of Git. And so the Git integration just allows us to have a repository for these components of tests and then access them all to run a single test.
Right. There's a question about ReadyAPI version in Docker image. So we support the latest and greatest. So right now the Docker image we extended should be for 2.5, and with the ongoing releases, we do plan to maintain the image and upgrade the image on your behalf. So really, we'll support the latest. So when 2.6 comes out, when the next, whichever version comes out, we'll definitely update Docker image correspondingly.
It's part of our build process, so to speak.
Yeah. Right. And then questions on,
can the ReadyAPI version be specified in the Docker image?
Right. That's the one we just answered.
Yeah.
So right now we support the latest. And there's a question for API Blueprint. We do have an outdated one, but we're gathering feedback. So it's even your question here is great to hear. There's can we use this on Linux machine and also share it on a Windows machine? Yes, that's actually a very, very, very common scenario. So, we're fortunate where our code base is cross-operating system and completely agnostic to machines. So we have, for example, a lot of people designing their API tests in ReadyAPI in their Windows machines and then automating everything on Linux. And, we definitely have reusable license that works in every environment. And then we have some other people that would be on Mac. Okay, if we missed anything, let us know. It's great to hear so many questions, and and absolutely, any other questions, just let us know. We'll probably take
Actually, there was a good
pause.
question here. If I buy a floating license, can I use it on a Linux machine and also share it on a Windows machine?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Correct. Easy.
Right.
Okay, shall we talk about the start page?
Yes, let's talk about the start page. So, ReadyAPI is incredibly powerful. SoapUI is incredibly powerful, and it helps you create incredibly robust API tests that can, jump through hoops and can do all sorts of exciting things. But we weren't as good about making it easy for people to do simple things. So I would say that was what drove us to this major change to the ReadyAPI start page. And the sort of most important part of the change is that we added this ability to explore an API. And when we say explore an API, we basically just say, I want to put an endpoint in and I want to see what comes back. And I don't really want to go through all of this specification of all different parameters, and I don't want to have to set create assertions, and I just want to see what comes back. Just let me do the simple thing. And while you could do that in ReadyAPI or in SoapUI, it really wasn't easy to find it and stuff like that. So we've updated the start page, and we have the ability now to make it really easy for you to do that. Right in the top of it is this ability to put in an endpoint and look at the results that come back. And Mike is showing it to us right now.
And I'm hitting this API too much, so it's rejecting me. But I know
great.
that, right? After paste and send.
Why would you? And that would be a great reason to do virtualization.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, to Gail's point, that this is really a very big, user need, because we're so thorough at testing that I think we
lost sight of the simple.
Yeah, exactly. Like we overbury. Like, yes, we could create a test and I can pick the status and parse the JSON out of it and write an assertion based on it and automate it and throw it into Jenkins, et cetera, et cetera. But those are kind of longer term end goals. Sometimes we hear from from an API provider, it's like, here's my API, here's the endpoint, and you just want to pin it, right? And we did hear a lot of feedback that people will definitely turn to other tools. They'll go to curl commands, they'll look at Postman just to inspect an endpoint, and then come, for end-to-end testing, data-driven, et cetera, for the long term. But before they get there, they want to verify that API even works. So this it's
almost the first step in the test, right?
I mean, exploratory testing is definitely a motif in QA and testing. And this is, like I said, this is very often a first step. This is very intuitive. You paste here. If you need headers, you can provide, I don't know, for example, auth token 123. That's going to be sent behind the scenes. If you need to post some data, typically if you select any different method, then you can start entering data in the body. So you can provide input, can't type today. Whatever, 123. And again, this will get sent behind the scenes. And then you can sort of kind of, see how that affects the response. In my case, it really doesn't.
It still doesn't like it.
No, I mean, the love date, just use the rejection, it's fine. And then the great thing is, once you are satisfied and you want to create a test, let's pretend that we expect rejection here. We can say create a test. That's going to kick it off in, in the flow to add a few additional data. So we can create a project. We can append it to a project. We can choose what we want to do. We can choose what assertions we apply or not. More on that later. And then we have a test basically created that we can run, right? So from here, we will pick up whatever authentication for headers that we've applied, whatever input we provided, and then we can say, this is now our expected negative test where we're expecting to be over query limit, and then we can rerun this, right? So hopefully you've seen some new things like assertions. Hopefully the editor looks a little bit different. we'll touch on that. But the start point, the entry point for API exploring would probably be, at a start page, and then you can get to the easy, robust testing in no time.
So yeah, so the other thing, we've updated a little bit more on the look and feel on that page, but in general, those capabilities that are on the start page were available in the past.
Right.
So what we skipped over moments ago,
yes,
was one of the things we also thought about is, when I create a test, really, how good is it if I haven't created some assertions, if I haven't done some tests to make sure that the data that comes back is what I expect. So what we decided was we can actually set it up so these tests are automatically created with assertions on them. And so we've added that right into the flow that you saw. And Mike, go through it some more.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So it's actually very, very powerful functionality, and we changed the flow based on how you're testing your API. So if it's an endpoint, you basically see, and I can create a test, apply status code and SLA. I think it gets even more powerful if we get into API definitions. So in case you haven't heard this, we are also a company behind Swagger and Open API specification, which is phenomenal. This will give you kind of a common language to describe an API, to look at it. You could have explored API in this Swagger UI, but you can see there's a lot of different methods. And there is a JSON or YAML definition, which is a bit of a mess. Like I look at this and I can probably do some stuff around it. But in ReadyAPI, we really made it powerful for you to start with that definition. So if you start with an API definition, which you could from a workspace or from file new, just provide that Swagger endpoint or Open API specification endpoint. We support Swagger 2 and OAS 3. Then, again, you can create a new project. You can, add this to an existing project. And then this is really where the power comes in. And this was the missing piece in my, from my experience, where we can now kind of blanket validate status codes. And this is making a crude assumption that we expect everything to be fine, but that's fine. This will apply, dozens of assertions right away. This will make sure that the response I have is compliant to the definition, which if you've ever worked with an API from API definition and the actual response was different from what they described, it's frustrating. And that's an understatement. So this will help you automate and validate that. And then you could potentially work on the SLA as well. So let's be a little more forgiving. Let's give this SLA half a second instead of a fifth of a second to respond. From there, we can select multiple tests or a single test with all the steps. It's kind of up to you. And you can see what I've done is I talked a lot, but in all my talking, I still took about a minute to go from a Swagger definition to create all the tests with API endpoints. Each one is basically validating and applying assertions for everything so we can see what's passing, what's failing. I see a lot of reds, so I will be able to go in and see why exactly it's failing. And here you can see the status code is fine. It's actually responding pretty good. But in my definition itself in the Swagger, the 200 status code is not described. So I know that I'm already out of compliance. And I could potentially trigger this about strict compliance or not, and we can split hairs. But you can see what an easy, powerful entry point it is for me to just take a definition, create close to 24 tests, run it, and now, as you know, we can automate it and we can reinforce this. So if this was all green, we can put it in CI pipeline and enforce that it's always staying compliant against the specification. Okay.
So verification automatically.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. So I'm just looking to see if there's some questions that are things that we can answer
Right.
without going into a whole nother place.
Okay. Seen issues. So there's one or two that effectively are seen issues. They sound a little specific. So if you don't have a support case, if you haven't let your account rep know, please do. We're happy to look into it in a case-by-case basis and jump in on a support case and provide, developer feedback, etc. Have them look into it.
Okay, so updated. So okay, so we've updated the request response editors, and actually we've done some usability sessions with a number of people, and the feedback's been great. It seems like a minor thing, but we know that our users spend a lot of time in these editors, and so cleaning it up and providing these changes have really been powerful. The feedback is actually really fun to listen to. People love it. So I'll let Mike go through it in some more detail.
Yeah, sorry. And there was a question about whether my previous example of Swagger or Swagger Hub. It was Swagger. There is a way to import stuff from Swagger Hub and potentially automate assertions on that as well. So the editors. So SoapUI is got him some history, right? A lot of history. We can tell tall tales for a while. And as part of that, we kind of started questioning the layout and the outline. And this is more kind of for existing users. So we shifted things around. And if you're brand new, like for example, in the questionnaire in the earlier survey, we saw a lot of people are trying right now. This might be history that is completely irrelevant. But for example, some of these tabs for request responses were vertical, and we literally saw people kind of turn their head, which was not ergonomic. So we put the tab on top. It's as simple as that. We had some kind of obsolete, outdated question marks for help. Now we have informational icon, which is a little more standard, which will hopefully kind of drive things better. We've separated out the construct of an endpoint a little more consistently. So, in projects, for example, we had resource and query string together. Now everything is broken out in 3. And even if you remember in our initial exploring of APIs, we kind of guide you on how we treat this endpoint and how we break it out into kind of domain, resource, query string sections. And there's a lot of other little tweaks. We kind of, for example, in the project side, we've given you advanced option in front and middle. Now we made it a collapsible middle screen, so that becomes a lot easier to kind of manage. And also in the parameters, so if you had or configured parameters before, we kind of imposed this level on you, which was a 4th column, which I can dive into what it is, but it's easier for you to just not worry about it. We kind of moved it into advanced options. So you can see it's kind of a lot of little cleanup. Oh, and the biggest ones were in both tabs, we moved the send button from a small little triangle on the left all the way to a big green button on the right, which we saw is a little more consistent with kind of user expectations. And, again, when migrating, my mouse did move to the left a little bit. Usually I'd go and click send here. But this, we consolidated the run and stop into one. And we also did the common actions like add assertion or go from project or interface into a test into a button that's very easy to access as well and very descriptive. So if you need to add this to a test, you can do that here. And then, once you're in the test, you can easily add assertions just with a click of a button that's easily available. And again, before you had to find assertions tab, expand it, add an assertion, etc. Or there was a little plus that wasn't even specific to an assertion. It was just a green plus. So there's a lot of little things, but they're intuitive, and it's like a joke. Like if I explain it, it's just not funny. So a lot of these UX tweaks are meant to be more intuitive. So again, please provide feedback. We hope you like it. We've done a lot of usability, and so far the feedback's been very positive. Okay. Anything else on the editors? All right. Yeah, we touched on the rest param as well. And all right.
Refactoring.
Yes, REST refactoring. So
we've done a lot of work on REST refactoring. It's actually been on our list to do for a while, and we spent a lot of time working with users and the team to understand the process that people, well, to understand the process that you had to go through, and then to make it better. So basically, we've cleaned it up significantly and made it really simple to use. And I think that anybody who might have looked at it in the past should take a really good look at it again, because it's really great, because it allows you to easily now clean up your APIs.
Right. And REST refactoring, I think maybe we need to be a little bit more specific. It is a very powerful tool for kind of more advanced users. And we narrowed down the use of REST refactoring specifically to API definitions, right? So again, going back to Swagger, going back to OpenAPI specification, even other definitions like Waddle. So for example, you can see I added a new parameter, maybe in the update pet, I can modify some parameters, some values, or here in the pet ID, I'm going to say that this is get pet by pet identification. So if there are some changes in the API itself, and there's a lot of tests created from it, which you can see we can auto create and auto generate in no time, there is a refactor definition functionality, which can point you to the latest, greatest endpoint. So you can, latest, greatest API definition. So as I mentioned earlier, we support refactoring against updated Swagger, refactoring against the updated Open API specification, updated Waddle. And then this is sort of where it gets a little bit cleaner. So you can start seeing some of the differences. So all the stuff that is directly linked really hasn't changed, right? And we can see things that have. So for example, get pet by ID, there's a change in there. There's update pet from within, there's a small change, delete pet. So there is a parameter that changed for all of them, right? So I will be able to kind of link the refactor and make sure that it's saving the relationship. So everything that used to get pet by ID before is mapped. And then any kind of change, for example, pet identification, that can be removed, that can be linked with pet ID. So we can definitely get very granular about how we update our tests based on the update in the API. So again, you can actually get down the parameters, the description, the definition, the resources, the query params, etc. So it's pretty powerful. And then as you maintain the test for your APIs and the developers consistently enhance the APIs, this really kind of marries the two and updates and refactors your tests as the APIs get updated. So it's one of those functionalities that we knew was very powerful. And candidly, I had to involve developers anytime I tried to use it. So then I worked a lot with UX to clean it up where it's a much simpler flow now. So again, use it, provide feedback. Happy to hear, how hopefully this helps you. And if it doesn't, we'll fix your issue. Yeah. REST refactoring. This is about linking the request. So this is, again, candidly, this is some more legacy functionality. So any test step is taken from an interface. So you can see that this is a V2 pet, and it is linked back to an interface to add a pet. I don't really expect people to do this a lot, but this used to be a kind of incoherent dropdown before. So if you need to change it to something else, you can just relink it to, for example, from a post to a put function with some different methods. So you can relink it. This changes the step. Again, not super common, but this whole flow of how you link and relink has been updated. So if you used it before with the dropdown that was in the middle of an endpoint, it's now this little link icon that you can still get to. And then the last point, again, it's kind of very technical into the weeds about if you need to send or not send content length 0, which is basically an empty message where we'd still put a header on it. We now put a a text option that can help you strip it out, because there are some APIs that were looking at this header value and not giving a response because it was even there. So, okay, so that was it for SoapUI. For LoadUI, again, we've done so much work. I really can't, overstate it. A lot of it was just around stability, around running, around performance, around, making sure that the automation, performance, all of it worked really well together. So, so we've definitely focused on the performance of it. And again, I don't want to show you an 8-hour load test.
Oh, come on.
Well, if you guys, want to stick around till 2 a.m. Eastern time, we can probably kick one off. But as part of that, there is a new, and I'm doing air quotes, you can't see me, feature, where we can go into previous load tests. And so we always had previous data that allowed you to render graphs, so you can see, different peaks, valleys, etc. But it didn't let you see summary. So now we can actually regenerate a report based on the old statistics data. So this will give you summary data like 90th, 95th, 98th percentiles, for example, for overall load test runs. And this should also help you, if you ran something at 2 a.m., the process was done, and then you ran something again, 6 a.m., you can then at noon retrieve data that was done at 2 a.m. So you should be able to go back and look at the summaries, look at the reports, regenerate them in PDF, etc. So, okay.
And lastly, ServiceV Pro, my personal favorite. So we've made enhancements to ServiceV so that you can now virtualize TCP-based virtual services. And the power of that is not in TCP, but it's in all the applications that are running on top of TCP. So for example, I can do things like virtualize Internet of Things applications or mobile applications, heavy data applications, MQTT, those kinds of applications can now be virtualized. And you can go ahead and use it for testing environments and stuff like that. So the way we create virtual services in the TCP environment is sort of like what we did with JDBC. And what we're doing now is allowing you to go ahead and start recording your transactions over TCP. TCP/IP, you record the transactions, you record the responses, and now you can start to edit them, you can duplicate them, you can generate, it basically provides a framework for generating request responses of any type for anything that you would want to virtualize. So where we had focused on very sort of API-specific types of virtualization in the past, you'll see that we're moving the product forward and providing virtualization services beyond just APIs, certainly JDBC, but also TCP/IP virtual services. So it's kind of an exciting one. It's definitely projecting us into another place. But the framework of ServiceV and Virt Server is the same. And this allows you to just do additional virtualization capabilities on top of that.
Absolutely, yeah. And the one example is we were doing some work for MQTT. We were able to actually virtualize MQTT and then throw a load against that virtual TCP virtual service, even though it was kind of mimicking MQTT traffic. And this really gets more into the IoT space. It's a level below HTTP and SOAP. And you can even see we can't even really rely on text. We will literally go into the hexadecimal editors and representation.
I can read hex.
I'm not as smart. I'll take it.
So yeah, as Mike said, this is now virtualizing services that we couldn't do before. And we actually had a lot of customer requests for this. That's what drove this. And I want you to all feel as though your voices are heard as well. So we literally had a lot of customer requests to extend ServiceV to go into this space of virtualizing TCP. And that provides, like Mike said, the framework for being able to test IoT and all sorts of new services that are coming on board. It's a very high volume environment where you're hitting lots of devices. It's,
like WebSockets, etc., IoT,
Yeah.
all the,
so it's actually
literally like down to the packets.
Yeah. So it's very exciting.
And again, we're kind of showing this, but in case you weren't aware, we do virtualize JDBC layer itself, so not the database, but the JDBC transaction. Same with JMS and MQ, different type of transactions. And I mean, we're phenomenally strong for REST, SOAP, etc. So, if you have any questions about pre-existing functionality, let us know.
Yeah, and just in general, ServiceV allows you to virtualize if you have a definition. But the other part of it, which is what we're expanding upon, is the ability to virtualize based on recording, and then playing back what you recorded during the virtual, when you're using the virtual service.
Yep. And I think that was it as far as new features for 2.5 release.
I think so. Well, there's lots and lots of additional things, but we've picked out some of the more exciting ones. Their documentation, actually, not that anybody likes to read documentation, but there is a lot of documentation online about all the new capabilities. We encourage you to search, go find anything that you still want more information on. I know Mike we've sent a couple of references to documentation to some of the questions that have been asked. We're going to show the documentation.
I'm just sharing the link as well in the chat.
Okay, good. And then the last slide is about usability sessions. So we love to talk to our customers. We really want to encourage you to play with us. So anyway, so if you have just 30 minutes and you have the energy for it, we would love to have a usability session. You don't have to know anything. In fact, we love it most when people don't know things. We don't want to know how the experts are using it. No, we do want to know that as well. But we would love to hear from you. So if you have the time or you have the inclination, please reach out. We'd love to set up a session, really simple, to go through your use cases, see how you're using it, what you're doing to get things done. So just send a quick email to ux@smartbear.com and we'll get back to you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really great. I think we've learned a lot from users over the past year and made a lot of UX changes. I think you can see that with this new release of ReadyAPI 2.5. Before we end things here, I just want to launch a quick poll. It's optional. If you saw a feature of one of these tools that you wanted to learn more about, maybe you're someone who's not using ReadyAPI, you don't have a paid license right now and you'd like us to follow up with more information, please just go ahead and select the tools that you'd be interested in learning a little bit more about. Again, this is optional. So we hope everyone enjoyed this session today and kind of found it useful to get a chance to talk with our awesome product managers here over at SmartBear. We'll send the recording out in the next 48 hours, so stay tuned for that. And definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us on social media or via the chat on our website. And we'd love to talk to you again soon. So thanks everyone for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.